The Shroud of Turin is one of the most researched and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like, humanly, I don't think like that is another level of love. It's not I'm gonna say, like, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
Asking both experts and disciples, who do you say I am?
As far as who the man of the shroud is, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278. Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Sowing Hope. I am Bill Snyder. It's wonderful to be with you, and thank you so much for tuning in. We are in the middle of yet another series. We are doing the Synod this time around. If you missed our very first episode of the Synod, I hope you go back into our archives and you find the first episode of that, because this is episode number 2, probably of 10. So we're into that 10-part series kind of mode these days here. But we're super excited to be with you. And as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Ann DeSantis. Ann, how are you?
Great, Bill. And it's so good to be here on this series, because I think we're unpacking something that's very relevant right now that's going on. The Worldwide Synod that was started by Pope Francis last year, and it goes until next year. So this is our second podcast. And I think we discussed that we're going to talk on this one, not only about the process of the actual surveys that went out all over the world, but also one of the biggest aspects that I think that they're finding as to reasons why people might decide that they are not going to stay with the church, or where they're unhappy. And one of those areas is the welcoming. So we're going to spend a whole podcast on that and talking about what does that mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being welcoming and definitely talking about the survey too, which is, I think, an important aspect of this whole thing. I mean, the church wants to learn about, which is a good thing, wants to learn about where it's being perceived as disconnecting with society, right? And so how do we reconnect? And so, well, one of the best ways to do that is through a survey. So I know you've spent a little bit of time working with and learning about the survey and that process of what went into it. So I'd love for you just to share with us a little bit about that.
Yes. The name of the survey, it's called the DMI, which is this Disciple Maker Index. And it's a 75 question instrument that was used not only by, United States archdiocese and diocese, but actually all over the world. It is the largest and the most robust study of Catholic life that's ever happened, ever. And so it's really a big thing that 450,000 people have taken these surveys and have participated in them worldwide. I was actually just on a webinar today with the Catholic Leadership Institute, learning more about what we can learn as a church, not only those things that we're doing correctly, the things that people like about us. Like we can look at the top 3 things for your parish, for instance, that the parishioner said what they think is your highest qualities, but also what they call those areas of opportunity. Really, that's not to give it a negative sense, but more that positive, that it's not so much the good or bad of it, but maybe what can we learn here, right? Mm-hmm. That's the most important aspect of this. And I just want to invite people also to go on the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website at the usccb.org and look at the page there for the Synod. There's a lot of information there. And it says that the Synod is a 2-year process, listening and dialoguing beginning with a solemn opening in Rome, which began on October 9th and 10th of 2021, with each individual diocese and church celebrating the following week, October 17th. That's when it started. And it concludes in 2023. And our Holy Father invites the entire church to reflect on a theme that is decisive for life and its mission. He says it's precisely this path of synodality which God expects of the church of the third millennium, the journey which follows in the wake of the church's renewal proposed by the Second Vatican Council is both a gift and a task. By journeying together and reflecting together on the journey that has been made, the church will be able to learn through her experience which processes can help her to live communion, to achieve participation, and to open herself to mission. And those 3 words are the ones we can reflect on, which I know you said during the first podcast, is that communion, participation, and mission.
Yeah. And
it's just a very big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, these, again, the surveys, I think, as you pointed out, the points of opportunity where the church can, and let's be clear, we're not talking about the church changing its stance on, the deposit of faith in any way, shape, or form. We're not talking about them, changing doctrine and dogmas, left and right. We're talking about areas in which the human person can come into contact with the church in a more palatable way, right? The teachings of the church, and the deposit of faith can't change, right? Like that's something that cannot change. It would be it would be, of course, completely wrong for the church to do that. Pope Francis is trying to get the church to become open to a wider plethora of people, because you see what ends up happening is in society, like, Jesus reaches out into the peripheries. He reaches out into the peripheries to gather and to call. those to holiness, right? And when the church only serves those who it is who are walking into its walls, then it's, we use the term preaching to the choir, right? It only preaches to the choir. This is about reaching beyond the walls of the church. We cannot sit back any longer, and that's kind of the way, in that quote you just read, Pope Francis kind of highlighted it, right? Like, this is the call to go out into the world and bring people in. So, offering a survey, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this survey is being offered in some pretty different ways. So it's not just, in the churches. Yes, you can find it in your archdiocese, your diocese, but the reality is that the Pope has tried to make this widely available to society as a whole. So if you're uncomfortable approaching your parish because you might have some issues with, personalities in the church that hurt you or whatever, the archdiocese and the Vatican, I believe, even has the survey as a touch point for those who are not Catholic or not or are struggling with their faith or whatever, and you can go to a website, typically on the archdiocesan website, and fill out the survey and talk about your honest answers, because that's how, again, without sacrificing church teaching, without changing church teaching, that's how the church can understand how best to evangelize and reach into the peripheries of our society. Think about it. If Jesus never went to the peripheries, if he never went into tax collectors' homes and pulled them out, and said, "Come, follow me. Now it's time to come, follow me." If he never went to these places, the church would look vastly different than it does today. It would be just a myopic little church that didn't spread worldwide. And so this is the inspiration of the Holy Spirit working through our Holy Father to say, all right, let's re-examine how we do this, and quite honestly, how we do this in the 21st century, 21st century too.
Exactly. Very well said, because all of those things are very important when you take out that magnifying glass, because that's kind of what we're doing here, aren't we? We're looking at ourselves and asking people their opinion. And when you ask somebody their opinion, the people who go to that church are members of a diocese, archdiocese, and they tell the truth. There's ways that we can look at it which will help us to see what we're doing right. And also there's areas that we really need to say, let's rethink. And I think that's really the purpose of all of this. The purpose is to be able to look at things like, and I'll just give you some of the terminology, like the key drivers, the Catholic journey. When you look at the different Catholic journeys of people, where they are, and they put them on a scale of like from 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. 5 being those people who go to daily mass and the people who are very devoted to their faith. And 4 being people who Sunday mass goers who are not quite 100% like maybe loving their church or devoted, but they're there every week, right? And then the 2s and the 3s and the 1s, I mean, they're the areas of opportunity, right. People who are on that Catholic journey. And then you look at it as those strengths and opportunities. And there's ways that you can improve. Like, I'll just give you one example. One of the things that we talked about today on the webinar that I attended was that if you're in a church where you have most of the people on their Catholic journey or in the 1s, 2s, and 3s, which is like that lower spectrum of faith, when you're figuring out they just give this one example, like your weekly confessions. They find that people who are more devoted to their faith go to confession more often, right? So they're there every week. Maybe they need to extend their confession hours or have confession more readily available when most of the people in your church are 4s and 5s, right? Mm-hmm. And so if they're 1s, 2s, and 3s, maybe there's other areas. I mean, obviously you still have confession available, but the priest isn't sitting there for an hour by himself every Saturday for 2 hours or whatever. I mean, that was just like one example that they gave, that depending on your demographics, depending on their Catholic journey, depending on even the age, right? Like if there's a lot of young adults there, you want to offer more things that are geared for that age group.
Yeah.
So simple
Absolutely.
things that you can do when you know exactly who you're dealing with. Now, of course, not everybody took the survey, so some of what you decide to do is going to be based on your own intuition, right? You know that not everybody took the survey, but say you're in an older parish or something, you can make decisions that are based on the demographic and the Catholic journeys and those key drivers of the people that go to your church.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, reaching into and down into those 3 2s and 1s is so very important.
Oh yeah.
And developing a plan, whether it be for your pastoral staff or whether it be for just you yourself, how do we reach into that? And maybe during Christmas and Easter, when many of those, as we as we have come to understand it, the creasters, right? We hear that term a lot, the creasters, right? Maybe the welcoming, maybe the you can explore different ways to target, those people who are passively coming, and doing it, as one of my pastors used to say, as a Pez dispenser for the sacraments. Is the church just a Pez dispenser for our sacraments and a thing to check off, or are we inviting them into a personal and holy and beautiful relationship with Jesus Christ, which is what those 4 and 5s are experiencing, right? That's what they're experiencing. So how do we invite people to come along that? And honestly, it's many of those ways are the personal invitation. We can talk about it all we want on podcasts. We can preach about it from a pulpit, or priests can preach about it from a pulpit all they want. But until there is that discipleship, that walking along, and I love that it's called the discipleship index, the disciple measurement index, or whatever it is, right? Because that's the beautiful encounter that we, where are you along the journey? And those of us who are early on in that journey, those 1, 2, and 3s, need people to walk alongside of us and show us the way to push us deeper in, and deal with our sinful patterns and behaviors, and deal with and push us to holiness. And so we need that, and to listen to us, right? Listen to our hurts and our sufferings and everything we've been going through. We need those buddies. And so if you're out there in the parishes, or you're out there, as pastors listening to this, think about those ways that you can empower your parishioners, and especially those high energy, 4 or 5s, to really go out and meet those people down below, because that's a big piece of evangelization and also discipleship.
Oh yeah, no, really good points. And these are all things that you're talking about, are things that I heard when I attended the webinar with the Catholic Leadership Institute. And that's what they're hoping to do, is not only to educate people like you and I, Bill, but everybody, so that everybody is part of that. Because, it's not going to change unless everybody's on board, or that a lot more people are on board with that whole welcoming thing. 'Cause I know that's sort of the theme of our podcast. And part of that welcoming is the pastor and his message, but it's also just those friendly faces when people feel like I belong here, right? And even sometimes, aside from doctrinal issues, sometimes people are on board with certain things with the faith, but they just don't like that church. They don't like the pastor, right?
Yeah.
And they don't feel comfortable. So, I mean, we have to look at that and say, for every church, how can we supply the needs, but staying within Catholic teaching and Catholic doctrine, as you said at the beginning of the podcast, but be those friendly faces to them, so that they feel that they and their family belong there. And I think one of those biggest ways is obviously Sunday Mass, right? Because that's when most people, I mean, what, 90% of people are going to get that interaction from just being at Mass on Sunday because they're not involved in all the other activities.
Right.
Not everybody is. And not everybody attends daily Mass either. So it's that Sunday Mass experience where they really do feel that need to be welcomed. I know that a church that I used to be a member of, what we did was we had greeters so that people, when you walked in, I used to be a greeter. It was just simply to say hi to everybody. And so that they would recognize that one face of someone who said hello, before they sat down into their pew. I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, just to explore that as well, not only doing that before Mass, but doing it after Mass as well.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
having those people hang around. I was talking to a friend earlier, and he was saying, when I see a young man that goes into Mass that I don't know, I pull him aside at the end of Mass and introduce myself, right? And I say, "Hey, you have 5 minutes to just chat? Let me invite you to this. Let me talk to you. This is not about forcing you to go to some program or whatever. It's just about introducing you and say, hey, here's an invitation to learn more. I'm heavily involved in this parish. I would love it to share with you my faith and share with you, like that is something that we can do. Again, because when people feel personally personally invested, I think it's one of the biggest things that worldliness sucks up is, we see it on our commercials all the time, right? Commercials, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, they're trying to tug at heartstrings in commercials, right? Because they know that if they can manifest and say, oh man, I am showing you that I care about you, that I'm invested in you. I mean, you think about every one of the one that comes to mind off the top of my head here is, like the K jewelers, right? Every kiss begins with K. Well, they show you along this journey, they're every guy looking for a wedding, engagement ring. They show you, oh man, okay, they care, and they know, like, imagine if the church did that. Imagine if the church, and here's the thing. Here's the real catch. K doesn't really care. They just want your money and they want you to buy an engagement ring through K Jewelers. Jesus and the church really does care. And it's not just to sign you up for some program, it's to get you to heaven, right? And so that's our goal. Like, it's not about getting to go to some men's or women's group or go to, become a Knight of Columbus. Like, I'm not interested in signing you up for anything. I'm interested in your personal salvation. And if people, and your walk with Christ and how I can help you, right? Like, if that's the approach that disciples take, those 4 and 5s take, before or after Mass, as you mentioned, as greeters, as just people who are reaching out and deeply caring, not only are lifelong friendships formed, but that's how the church ends up being transformed. And so, because it's this effort that is so grassroots, and we need it. We need that in the church. And so if you're on fire for Jesus, step up like that, and you will see the parish transformed. Pastors encourage people to do that. I guarantee you will see a drastic change in your parish.
Yeah, that's a good invitation, Bill. I like how you directed that to the people listening, because that's who we, right, Bill and I, and our podcast, Patchwork Heart Ministry, Fiat Ministry Network, the St. Raymond Onatus Foundation, who we care about, right? We're on this mission together to evangelize. We're not just evangelizing you who are listening, we're evangelizing ourselves and our families, right? I can't say enough, though, if you would check out that website for the Synod. Definitely check it out at the usccb.org. Please do. And also learn more, because it's just very, very important to learn about it and how you can help. The only other thing I want to mention, which was mentioned today when I did went to the webinar, is that we're caring about people's salvation and about their getting to heaven. But I thought in further unpacking that, part of that is imitating Christ. For us to get to heaven is for us to imitate him. It is for us to be him for other people. And quite frankly, we won't get there unless we do that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying this to make it sound like, it's all about just Anne, me getting to heaven, or Bill, right? It's about all of us. But we need to understand as a church that partaking in ministry, in spreading the gospel, and in caring about being Jesus for the sake of love, not just as a ticket to heaven, right? Because you hear that a lot, people that say they care about people getting to heaven. Well, care also about the way it's done, right? Care also about the way that it's done, because it's not just you evangelize them and make a big checkbox next to your name that you did what you were supposed to do, right? You do it because you are imitating the person who you love and who loves you. And because that's all of our job, right? So thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for all you do and for this podcast. And I hope that all of you stick with us for the next episodes, because we are going to go through all of these different facets. Like today we talked about welcoming. So we're going to talk about other things like priest homilies and the importance of that, and talk about the importance of the other ministries that churches offer, because there are reasons that people either stay or leave churches, is that they don't like what they offer. So we're going to talk about all those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, we do encourage you always to reach out to us. You can very simply at sowinghope@patchworkheart.org. That's our email. You can reach out there. But in addition to that, check out our website, patchworkheart.org and patchworkheartradio.org. You can find all of our podcasts and everything there. And I want to just, as we wrap up, remind you as well that we're coming out with a documentary on the Shroud of Turin. And so we're super excited about that. And there are different ways that you can help support our film. And in its production stages, we're in the final production stages, getting ready for that daunting post-production. So if you can, reach out to us and support the film. We've got some exciting updates for you and whatnot as well as that winds up. But until next time, from all of us here at Patchwork Heart Ministry, I'm Bill Snyder. Keep feeding to your Catholic heart and sowing hope into those broken hearts.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or AndySantis2.
The Shroud of Turin is one of the most researched and studied relics in church history, and profoundly impacts many who encounter its mystery.
As a person of faith, looking at it through the eyes of faith, I don't think it can help but touch your heart.
Something that we can look on not only to bolster our faith in those moments of weakness, but also to deepen our faith and our appreciation, our intimacy with Christ.
Join Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry as they examine the science of the shroud through the lens of faith.
Really interesting scientific information that we didn't know about, like the pollen from all the different regions of the world. As the shroud traveled around, it picked that up. Some of the mites, things like that was really interesting to me. I mean, this made you really want to believe it a lot more.
It's impressive. Like humanly, I don't think that is another level of love. It's not I'm gonna see people like, oh, I love you, I'll give you a chocolate. No. I'm giving you more than my life. I'm giving you my suffering.
asking both experts and disciples, "Who do you say I am?"
As far as who the man of the shroud is, as a person of faith and kind of reviewing the evidence there, it seems that a convincing argument can be made that it's Jesus of Nazareth.
Visit patchworkheart.org/shroud to learn more and get exclusive behind-the-scenes updates for your support.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.